Hey everybody, Dana Stovern here with the Magic of Somatic Money, back for part 2 about the background stories leading up to this creation, this amazing creation of Somatic Money. All right, so we're starting off where Linda Lightfoot, my mentor, she's introduced me to Metaphysical realm basically, and we're doing the deep dive into the deep end of the pool on that. Like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid basically. 9/11 has happened. I'm realizing, oh, this is who I am. This is my gift. It connects all of these different dots. Oh my goodness. And I begin having the wherewithal of like, oh, I'm not here on the planet just to be a cog in the wheel and pay the bills and all of that. And 9/11 happened, and I had my very deep sensation of intent of I want to use my gift to better myself and better other people on the planet, like use my gift to help other people out, better other people's lives. So I'm in the middle of all of that. And the thing about psychic awakenings and initiation is like, they kind of take care of themselves. So like if you're going through anything like this, like you're going, oh my God, I'm getting pieces of the puzzle and the dots are beginning to connect and like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? Well, what you do is you pay attention. You pay attention to the breadcrumbs of the things that get left in front of you along your path. And when they arrive, engage them. Like actively acknowledge a breadcrumb has happened and engage with it and take action if that's necessary. And so that's what I did. And quite frankly, for a couple of years, I was just stumbling to keep up. And when I run across people who are going through their own psychic awakening, the thing that I can tell you is enjoy it. It is juicy. It is delicious. It is this unfolding of realizing, oh, we live beyond a 3D reality. Reality is, quote unquote, reality is height and width and depth and linear time, right? Well, I blew the box on that back at 9/11, and that's really like today, fast forward to 2024 and what we're all experiencing. We're all experiencing learning how to navigate in a very intensely metaphysical, higher vibrational environment. So whether you know it or not, you're probably having your own psychic awakening. And the thing I can tell you is that's happening. Yes, it can be overwhelming. It could be even scary. But the other thing I want you to know is it is amazing. It is like being on the most amazing, magical mystery ride. And suddenly a day of going to work becomes, oh, I talked with that angel, and oh, there's a feather on the ground, and oh, I found an angel penny over there, and oh, there's these signs and signals coming in. I need to pay attention to that. And so you move from this very flat, linear 3D existence to magical mystery tour happening every single day of your life. And it's beautiful. It's so engaging. It's so amazing. It's so wonderful. And I, to this very day, some days are harder than others. And yes, we're all living through very, very challenging times right now. But it's like what Linda seeded in me early on is to find the magical even in the middle of the challenging or the chaos, because it is there. They exist side by side. They are right there together. So my sheer psychic awakening went on for so this is what happened. My psychic awakening was taking off. I was learning how to channel. I was learning how to do psychic readings, even though I didn't know what those were. That's in the story about Merlin. I was learning, oh my goodness, I was learning about crystals, and I was learning about crop circles, and I was learning about all of these different things. It's like getting a PhD and all of these different things going on. And so I could not absorb information fast enough. At the same time, and this can happen with a psychic awakening, as you're waking up to the nether realms, so to speak, the other thing that happens is you can't help but also wake up to trauma in your life and dysfunction in your life and toxicity in your life and the truth of the dynamics that are happening in your life. And so I began putting two and two together about my relationship with my mother, who, we'll cut to the chase, my mom has an undiagnosed deep trauma, narcissistic personality disorder, mental emotional illness it was all covered up, of the generation of boomers and greatest generation of like, we don't talk about stuff. We shove it into the closet. We don't acknowledge it. We don't talk about it. We pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and we just keep going. Well, that put my mother into a position of, she never got the help she needed. She never talked about it. Everything was terrifying for her. And she became a person who made everything look good. She did all the right things, and underneath there was a great deal of toxicity and dysfunction and manipulation and some pretty ugly things that happened, especially between me and her. We'll just put it that way. And so as my psychic awakening was happening in one area of my life, also my awakening of trauma and toxicity and dysfunction and all of that was happening in another area of my life. And I, at that point, I was reading books, self-help healing books on this. I was occasionally going to talk therapy. Some was helpful, some wasn't. We're still in the beginning stages of therapy at that point. And I think the story that I definitely want to tell you about has to do with when I really began to grasp, like the nuts and bolts and rubber meets the road, when I really began to grasp what I was able to do. And this happened. This happened that winter of my psychic awakening. Like Linda started, like I was going through all the breadcrumbs and absorbing everything as fast as I could. And I was learning better how to meditate or get grounded in my center and get present with myself. And I was learning how to set energetic space. I was doing all of that. And even though in these videos I'm using the words intuitive and psychic and channel, like I'm using all of that, but at that time I wasn't using those words. I really didn't, like, to be honest with you, at that point, when my psychic gift started taking off, I did not know what a psychic reading was. Remember, I'm a good college-educated Methodist girl with roots from Colorado and Indiana, and we didn't do stuff like this. And so, at this point, I know that Linda knew that she had to get me across the line without freaking me out. She had to get me across the line and show me what I could actually do. So she decided one evening, she basically said, instead of us getting together at her place, we decided to get together at my place. And she wanted to show me this whole thing about opening up energy space and talking with the other side. Like, she wanted to show me how that worked. And of course, I'm game. I'm like, I'm on board. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And so she comes over that evening, and long story short, she shows me how to open up energy space for the first time. And it blew me away because, like, she was showing me, and then as I remember, I kind of took over. Like, she started showing me how to set up the energy space and open it up. And the next thing I know, I'm like, Linda, look it, do you see the light beings coming through? And it was basically her ascended masters. Her ascended masters came into the room, and I turned to her, I'm like, do you want me to tell you what they're saying? It's like the cat swallowed the canary. She was sitting there going, yeah. Like, not letting me, like, not letting me in on anything, because she just wanted me to experience it. So I saw these, like, ascended masters come in their light robes, and they just start talking, and they start telling me things to tell Linda. And so that's what I'm doing. And God, I must have channeled for a good half an hour. Now remember, I still don't really know what the word channel is. I kind of do, but I kind of don't. And basically, to me, I was basically sitting in my living room talking with light beings who are on the other side of the veil, and I was just telling Linda what these light beings were saying, and I knew that it was for highest intent, best intent, and that it was for her higher good, and to help get her from where she was at, to get her to a better place. And so this whole communication went on for, like, I don't know, a good 25, 30 minutes. I don't know. I lost track of time, and I was telling her, like, what they were showing and the colors this and the pictures that and, like, the whole thing. And then they were done. they're like, it was pretty much like, okay, that's it. And they like kind of turn around, leave the room. The energy just, it shuts down. And I turn around to Linda and I'm like, well, that was something, that was something else. And she's like, Dana, that's how it works. She's like, that's a channel. You just did your gift, and you just learned how to open up energy space, call in the higher light realm, talk with them, and tell me what was going on. Linda was basically like, honey, this is your gift. Like, not everybody can do this. Like, because I'm sitting there at that point, thinking, oh, everybody can do this. Like, everybody can just sit in their living rooms and do this. like that's how crazy it was to me. Like, I can see a world of people doing this. Like, that is not foreign to me. And so for me to think that other people can't do this, that hurts. Like, to me, that hurts. It's like, oh, so they don't get in on this like amazing thing. And, Linda's like, she's like, no, honey, this is your gift. Not everybody can do this. So she didn't say a whole lot after that. She pretty much like took the gift. She took the gift of the message that she got that evening through that, and she pretty much just like, we shut everything down, closed it out, saged it, blessed it, and she went on her merry way. She went home. She just let me. She was really wise that way. She didn't want to interfere. She didn't want to put anything on it. She just wanted me to let me have that. And so folks, that was my first mediumship psychic channel that I ever did for the first time in this lifetime. Now I probably did it in other lifetimes, but that was this time, the first conscious psychic empath channeling mediumship message. But I didn't have any of those words at that point. Like, I didn't have any words. Like, to me, that was just like, oh my God, that was just amazing. And the magic and the, oh my God. And so Linda let me process that. And not much later, like this had to be within weeks of that happening, and I'm still on my merry way with this, and weeks of that happening, Linda has a friend fly in from the Midwest, Jody, and Jody flew in from the Midwest to stay with Linda, to visit with Linda, and they invited me over for dinner one evening. And so I went over for dinner. So I'm thinking Friday night, girls' night out, and we're having dinner and some wine, and we're chit-chatting and having a good time. And halfway through this thing, Jody does this thing where she just kind of leans into me and she goes, so Dana, do you think you could do a psychic reading for me? And I do this thing where I'm like, what's a psychic reading? I mean, this is how much I didn't know anything about anything, and how soft and gentle that Linda had been with me. She was like walking me through experiences. We were talking about things, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And so Jody was the first person who said to me, hey, could I have one of those psychic readings? And I kind of went, like, I looked over at Linda and I'm like, I don't know, what's a psychic reading? And that's when Linda goes, she goes, honey, you know that thing we did the other night when I came over and you relayed all those messages from those ascended masters to me? Remember doing that? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, that's a psychic reading, honey. And so like, I'm sure they were looking at me. I was like, computing, because like, in my family, this would be taboo, and you go off to the circus and the tent and the fortune teller with the glass globe. And like, so I was having a hard time taking what I saw traditionally as a psychic reading and what I experienced. Like, it took me a few minutes, and I processed that one for a few days. And at this point, I have told my family nothing. My family knows nothing about this. Like, I'm in Fort Collins, they're in Greeley, my brother's across the country, extended family is scattered. But like, I have told my family nothing about any of this, and because I'm still processing all of it. And I remember having moments going, oh, this is really taboo with my family. Like, this is not going to set well with them. But the thing is, how Linda did it beautifully with me is she let me experience my full psychic mediumship channeling reading without any build up to it. She just let me walk into the experience and have it natural, normal, so that I could see what it was and decide for myself. And that's what I love about her so much, is she let me experience my gift and go through it and decide for myself and let everything fall into place from there. She didn't preload it. She didn't interfere. She just let it be what it was. And so when Jody leaned across the table and said, "Oh, could I have one of those psychic readings too?" And I had that moment of like, uh-oh, psychic reading, taboo, burp, 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 red alert, red alert. And so that's when I had to start processing, oh, this is really a gift I have. This is really something I could do, bells and whistles and dots connecting and all of that began to happen more. And then I had to start thinking about, but it's taboo in the traditional world, in the greater world, but this is real to me. Like, this is how I live. This is how I'm connected in. This is my gift. I can do it. And so in that conversation with Jody and Linda that night, I was like, "Sure, Jody, I'll do a psychic reading for you." And somehow in the middle of the mix of it, because like her trip and timing and like it wasn't all lining up, and so I said to her, well, I've always done kind of this creative writing thing. So what I'll do, like, that's when I began to put two and two together. I'm like, oh, I can open up energy space like Linda showed me, and I can call in your light beings and they can show up, because time and space all one, right? You can be wherever you're at, Jody. And I'm a writer, I'm a channeler. Like, I've been doing this, like, that's when the creative free writing stuff with the angels, that's when that came in handy. And so I basically designated, like, I got home from work one evening and I designated an evening for Jody. She wasn't there. She was halfway across the country at this point. An evening for Jody, and I sat down and lit a candle and opened up energy space, and I called in her light beings, and I basically sat down and wrote out a free-form channel for her. And and then I basically, it was like on a steno pad, and I basically folded it up and popped it in the mail to her from what I can remember. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of me beginning to do channeled, psychic, empathic, mediumship, written readings. And from there, once I did that one for Jody, Linda ran across a couple people that needed help on something. And so she brought the request for me. She's like, "Hey, could you do it for this person?" And I didn't know this person from anybody, and I never met this person. I'm like, sure. It's like, it was a woman who had a teenage 20-something son who had committed suicide. And they wondered if I could do a psychic reading to communicate with her son and create a written channel from that. And I'm like, sure, I don't see why not. I don't know if he's going to show up or not, but I don't see why not. So I did the same thing for this woman who I never met her, never saw her. I just had her first and last name, and I did the same thing for her that I had done for Jody. Like, one evening, designated a reading session time at that point for her, sat down, opened up energy space, called in energies, called in light beings, called in the soul of this son. We'll see what happens from there. And I basically sat down, and I remember it, like, I remember as I was writing, it was kind of general, and I remember having a thought of like, okay, spirit world, this is general. We need some specifics to prove to this woman that she knows that I'm talking to her son. And that's when it began to get specific. And there were specific things said, and there were specific objects talked about, and there were specifics that came up. And I wrote them all out, channeled them out. And again, like, the message got done, closed down the energy, folded up the piece of paper, handed it off to Linda at work, and she took it away to see this woman, gave it to this woman. And there were 2 or 3 corroborating pieces of evidence, so this woman knew that the channeled information was accurate, and therefore the emotional information that then came through in that channel to deliver from the son to her, the emotional information and energy that landed. And what Linda said to me afterwards is that channel gave that woman a healing and closure that she really needed to recover from the death of her son. So that was number 2. And then it kind of snowballed from there. Like I began to have some requests go on, different people, different things, and it began to move from there. Now you have to remember, at the same time, I'm like, in my life with my family and my husband at that point and the job, I'm beginning to put all of those pieces together as far as trauma and dysfunction and needing healing, needing support. Like it was like the more my gift turned on, the more I had to deal with my emotional stuff. And I still hold with that today. Is like, if you are going to do psychic work, then that needs to be paired with your healing work. And in the metaphysical community, I have found that there's a lot of bells and whistles of, the channels and the psychic stuff and the energy stuff. And a lot of times I don't see the trauma healing awareness stuff paired with it like it needs to be. And so that's one of the warning signals that I want to give to you, is like, if you are waking up, or if you're doing psychic work or energy work or healing work, as your gift is coming on, you have a responsibility to do your emotional healing work, your energetic healing work, and becoming trauma aware for both yourself and the other people in the community. And this is where I had my willingness to begin to open up the door and do my shadow work. And what's really interesting, like Linda said to me, like, I'll never forget this. This was when I was still working at the insurance agency. She's still across from me, and I'm beginning to put 2 and 2 together about my family. And Linda said to me at one point, she's like, "Oh my God, Dana, you're the only person that I know. You will take a deep dive into the most toxic, darkest, nastiest emotional sludge just to find a couple of nuggets, and you will come out with the most golden thread for healing and illumination and insight that then you plug in, and it shifts things, it heals things." And so that began to be another telltale sign of my gift, of my willingness to open up the door on shadow work and look at the tough stuff, so that you and we can find those nuggets of truth and healing and illumination to that. That's how I got through what I got through, to get myself to a better space. And that's what I do with clients, to help them get through the tough stuff, to get them to a better space. Is like, we're not only doing energy work and psychic readings, we're also doing opening the door on the shadow work, and opening the door on trauma, and opening the door on what's going on with EQ healing, energy healing, physical healing. The collective of that picture is really, really important. So that's all happening. Like, that went on for so that all started in 2001, and this is like the clock ticked on this through 2002, 2003, and by 2004 I was erupting. I was erupting. Like, I was understanding so much better what's going on with my family and my marriage and the work, and I knew that my time was limited on where I was at and what I was doing. And so by 2004 I left my marriage. I wasn't calling things out on my family yet, but I definitely was beginning to have some boundaries. At that point, I had come out of the closet. I had come out of the psychic closet. I must have come out of the psychic closet somewhere in 2002, 2003. I couldn't keep it a secret anymore. And at that point, my relationship with my family completely shifted. It went from me being the codependent caretaker and the peacekeeper, and me basically getting dumped on to take care of stuff for everybody else. And all of a sudden, everybody, I was still in the family, but everybody kind of went, there was an insulated silent pushback is basically what happened. Other than my mother, when I came out to my mother on the phone, she basically said to me, "People like us don't do things like that." And like I triggered into a 3-day migraine on that one that I had to recover from. But so initially, it was not like me announcing me and my psychic gift. Like when I finally knew what I was doing and I finally knew I needed to speak up about it and come out of the closet about it to a handful of people. It was not exactly met well in my family. And then all of a sudden my family realized, oh, this is not a passing season for Dana. She's like, this is a real thing for her. And when they realized that I was going to be on this path and that I was not going to leave it, that's when they kind of like changed their story. And I wouldn't say that I got the embrace on it, but it was more like a level of tolerance. It was like, okay, if you're going to do this, then we'll just tolerate this. We'll tolerate this with you for a while. You get a pass because we'll tolerate this with you for a while. There was no celebration. There was no curiosity. There was like, no, that's really cool. It was more like, oh, that's taboo. That's weird what she's doing. Keep it over there because that might, it might be catching. Somebody else in the family might get it. It was that type of thing. Well, by 2004, everything erupted. It was erupting. And so I left my marriage in 2004, filed for divorce. By spring of 2005, I was leaving my job. The divorce got finalized and I left northeastern Colorado and moved to the South Central Valley, the San Luis Valley. I was there for about 9 months in recovery. Like I was beginning to have some chronic illness, so I was like able to rest, recover. I lived in an apartment over a barn about 8 miles south of Alamosa. The Sangre de Cristos were out my kitchen window with Mount Blanca sitting there out my window, and I would go out at night and sit out on the deck, and just the expanse of stars was amazing out there. And for 9 months, to my heart's content, I read metaphysical books. I did channeling with my spirit team. And the crazy thing is like, it was such a new building. There was no phone installed. So for me to talk to anybody, I had to get in my car, drive to town, get on my cell phone, and have conversations in town. So I was pretty much sequestered out there, and the phone didn't get installed until about a week before I left. So Spirit World completely unplugged me from my old life. It gave me time to recover. That's when I did a really deep dive into the deep end of the pool. I remember going to Denver and the Tattered Cover in Denver, and I remember walking through the metaphysical section at the Tattered Cover in Denver, and with the divorce money that I had, because I was able to fund all of this, my place to stay, my time off. And one of the things that I gave to myself, I went through the metaphysical section of the bookstore at the Tattered Cover, Cherry Creek, downtown Denver, let myself pull books off at random, and the ones that resonated I took with me. I must have taken a stack of like 20 books with me to the San Luis Valley, and I journaled and wrote and read metaphysical books and meditated and talked with spirit team. And that really was the first platform beginning of me taking a launch off into what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I knew the San Luis Valley wasn't forever. I knew that was just kind of a bus stop along my way. And then from there, I started looking around, like, was I permanently going to move into Santa Fe or Taos, or was I going to move into Flagstaff, Arizona, or Sedona, or was I gonna go all the way over to California to Mount Shasta? Like, I didn't know where I was going, and I started checking everything out. And through the course of everything, by happenstance, by chance, by accident, I landed in Durango. The morning I was in Durango, I was walking down the street. And as I'm walking down the street, I literally felt the energy grid of the city just come through me and anchor me in through me. And all of a sudden, I felt like I belonged there. And within minutes a couple of tourists walked up to me and said, "Hey, it looks like you live here. Could you give us directions to XYZ?" And to me, that was a sign from the universe of like, this is where you need to be. So within a matter of a month or so after that happening, I moved I collected everything. I had 2 kitty cats, so my kitty cats and a truckload of stuff, and we moved to Durango, Colorado. And I began settling in, and within a month, I remember sitting out on the deck one evening having my meditation, and I remember Spirit World coming in, and they started showing me movie reels. Like, they showed me a movie reel of, well, if you make this choice, your life would go this direction. A movie reel of, like, if you make this choice, your life is going to go this direction. Or if you make this choice, movie reel, your life is going to go this direction. And they basically said, choice is up to you. You have put yourself in a really good position to make a very conscious choice about what you want to do, what you want to do. And the path that I chose, what I very consciously chose that evening, aligned with that intention that I had set a handful of years before. Remember that intention from the first video, of the intention of, I want my life to count for something other than being a cog in the wheel and just paying bills. I want my life to count for something, and I want to use my gift to better myself and better the world and help other people. That was my intention. And so after Spirit World showed me all those choices, one of the choices was to start my own psychic reading business. Good college Methodist girl from Colorado in the Midwest. Yeah, that's what they showed me. One of the choices was traditional. I can't remember what the third choice was, but the one in the middle was, you can start your own psychic reading business, set it up on the internet, and begin to do your work with other people. And like, there was no question. Of course, this is aligned intent. I've set myself along this path. This is aligned intent. And so I made the choice to, instead of taking the money that I had from my divorce, and this is critical because this pans out into some of the other stories, instead of taking the money to purchase real estate and go get a traditional job, I took my money from that divorce and I plugged it into funding my startup on my psychic business. Now, there's a lot of people out there who would think that is crazy, because it's one thing to come out and say, yeah, you're psychic and you're doing psychic work and you're helping and blah, and that whole thing. But it is a whole other deal to, put the cash on the barrel, basically, and say, and I am staking my claim. I am taking this risk. I am putting my investment money on my gift, on me. Like, who the hell does that? Like, I did it. So that's what I did moving forward. I bet on myself with my gift. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anyone in Durango. I still, at that point, so this was 2005, 2006. So I'm, maybe 4 years into my awakening, which those of you on path, 4 years in, that's a good toehold, but you still don't have experience underneath your belt. And so that's what I did at that point. I bet on myself. I invested in myself. I invested in my gift. I invested in path. I put the cash on the table for that investment. And so I began building a business from there. And it's not that I don't have entrepreneurialism in my blood. I do. And here's a little bit of background on that. My grandfather Newby, this is my mother's father from central Indiana, he could, what was it? He could, the saying, he could sell ice to an Eskimo kind of thing. And he was a contractor. He was a carpenter. And, there were times when I was a little kid, we would drive around Brownsburg, Indiana, and he would just I helped build that house, and we built that building over there, and I purchased that property and built that. He built quite, he was the greatest generation. He built roads, he built homes, he fought in World War II. this was that stalwart nature of that generation. And, that's what he did to take care of his family. And he had entrepreneurialism running through his veins. And that's one of the things that I inherited from him. There were some really awful things that I inherited from him, but that was one of the good things that I inherited from him, was the spirit, the sense of entrepreneurialism. And this is where I began to kind of, this is where I began to kind of leave the fold from Linda. Because for me to practice my gift and make it fully with my gift, I couldn't work a job and do it on the side. I had to pair my psychic gift and business. I had to pair my psychic gift and providing it as a service. And that's when I began to leave the fold with Linda, because Linda was old school psychic. And if you're wondering why I use past tense with her, she eventually committed suicide the Christmas of 2012. So she's no longer with us and hasn't been with us for some time. And she and I, even though we stayed in touch, there was a bit of falling out, because Linda was old school psychic. And old school psychic basically says, the gift is from God, you do the work for free, you do not charge money for it. And that's been the way it's been for a lot of psychic work for a very long time. And this is that whole taboo nature of, doing psychic work. First off is, has been historically taboo, but then because it's a gift from God, you don't dare charge for it. And this is why psychic readers or healers, like, there's this whole poverty consciousness thing that goes along with this. And I will be talking about that in later videos. But basically what happened between me and Linda is I saw the writing on the wall. I'm like, hey, if I'm going to invest in myself with this money, I've got to turn this into a business, and I have to charge for my service to make this work. Like, that's when I came into clarity of, hey, attorneys go off to school, and there's a lot of attorneys, they have the gift of debate, and they get paid really well for it. And what about these NBA basketball players who, yeah, they work really, really hard, but there's some of them, oh my God, they have a gift with that basketball and they're getting paid well. So why is it that you can have also have a quote unquote gift from God, but you don't get paid, you can't charge for it, you can't get paid for it, you cannot have an energy exchange. I'm giving the energy and information and experience and intuition, the psychic reading, and you cannot have that exchange to balance it out in kind. And that's where Linda and I began to have a falling out, because she was old school psychic and I was looking at this as this intent and commitment that I had made to my path. And I began to realize, I've got to come to terms with this. I cannot play out the poverty consciousness of the culture of the psychic community. I can't play that out. I've literally got to do this in a way where it is an energy exchange. And that's why I began talking about with people. I'm like, yes, I have a gift. It is a service. And if I provide the service for you, there needs to be an equal exchange for sustainability, so I can pay my electric bill, so I can put food on the table, so I can keep a roof over my head. Like, this was the come to Jesus meeting place that I began to have with energetic work and money. Okay, now I can speak to you about it very clearly now because I've come through so much. But at that time that was happening, I was quaking in my boots. I still didn't have my gift underneath my belt. I still didn't have strong enough footing to say, hey, my gift is valuable and it's worth it to have that exchange. It took me, like I'm saying this to you here now verbatim, but it took me a while to get there. And through the process, it began to create cracks in that relationship with Linda. And the thing is, like, I will always love her. I will always honor her. I will always respect her because she gave me the foundation that I have, that I now give to you, that I talk about in video, that I give to everybody in my audiences, that I give to everybody as far in my client work. So that is not for naught. That is something, and it's very valuable. And I feel very much like really being clear that the foundation that I was so lucky to be able to cultivate with Linda is now the legacy that I am sharing forward and paying forward so that more people can have access to that beautiful gift of magic that she gave to me. It's a beautiful gift of magic that I would like to give to everybody else. So, all right, so that is landing in Durango. So that fall, I established my business. The first round of it is, I called it the Purple Phoenix, because I saw very much like my part of my family. I have on my mom's side, there is the Peacock family name, which is very close to the Phoenix, and I really resonate with the Phoenix as far as the rising from the ashes, and then the cycle of, burning down death, rising from the ashes. Like I literally have embodied the Phoenix and the cycle of the Phoenix, not once, not twice, but multiple times through my path. And I called my first business the Purple Phoenix, and I began as a psychic reader, and not much later than that I realized, I'm not doing psychic readings, I am training other intuitives. Like I would get into session and realize, the energy and information coming through, yes, some mediumship for dead people, but primarily my spirit team was working through me to teach others to cultivate and take their gifts to a whole other level. And so very rapidly, I went from channeled psychic readings over the internet. I got this story the first time I went to the Durango Whole Expo. Like that's a story I need to tell in and of itself. I don't have time to do that now, but I learned how to do that Durango Whole Expo. I learned how to do psychic readings on the spot, public to public. Like, what you see Teresa Caputo doing, walking up and just start talking with somebody about, the dead person and the mediumship and all that. I learned how to do that at the Durango Whole Expo. Like people would walk up and I would just, there's this being and this being, and that's what they're saying, and that's what they're saying, and here, you need to hear this. And I had people laughing and crying and hugging. And so I cut my teeth on my psychic work in Durango, Colorado. That's where I really built out my first foundation. And that's where the Purple Phoenix began to take off from there. Primarily doing psychic work to help other people develop their intuitive ability. I was also helping people with healing, closure, that type of thing. And as my work developed and I picked up a business coach, one of my business coaches said to me, he's like, when I got to that point in my work of working with Michael, it was like, it had to have been, 2009, 2010. And Michael said to me at one point, he was like, Dana, you need to go back through all of your sessions and inventory the type of work that you're doing. Now, me being a Virgo, I keep really good records. And so I was able to go back through all of my calendar and what I did in each of those sessions. I was able to go back through each of those sessions and inventory was it a health healing session? Was it a relationship session? Was it an intuitive coaching healing session? Was it a business session? Was it a love session? Michael had me go through and inventory what I was doing. And you know what the really interesting thing is, folks? When I got done with that inventory, the majority, like the chunk, the bulk of the work that I was doing mediumship for money, for business, with people. And you know, that didn't even really dawn on me, because I was so focused on helping people with their psychic and intuitive and cultivating those abilities. But over the years, as the work continued, that's what began to happen, is like, Dana, how do I integrate my personal life with my business life, and what's going on with the money, and how does all of this work? Those were the sessions I was attracting into my business, and I was dumbfounded, because the stigma in the spiritual community is, we're doing our psychic work, and yes, we can take some money for it, but we want to have blinders on as far as money and business. We're looking over here at the love stuff and the health healing stuff and the psychic stuff. It's like there's really a feeling of money and business is over here, and the spiritual, psychic, energetic healing, like, it's over here, and keep the two separate. And so when Michael told me to do that inventory, and I did that inventory, and I came back and I was like, oh, Michael, I'm doing money business stuff. And he's like, yeah, I thought you might be. Like, he knew before I knew. It's kind of like Linda knew before I knew that I was psychic. Well, Michael knew before I knew that I was doing business and money with my psychic work. So when that happened, that's where Michael was like, we need you to begin to shift over and focus your work on, yes, you can do these other things, and that's all well and good, but you need to start marketing your service that you are doing the psychic work, the healing work, the mediumship, to solve issues for people in their money and their business area as it pertains to their personal life. Way of realizing, oh, that's the work that I'm beginning to specialize in with my business, and how that, like, to consciously know that's what I was doing in my business, and yet that is a taboo position to hold within the metaphysical community. Like, to be a psychic who's doing business work and money work, like, that's a feather ruffler. And so for me to begin to understand that, now remember, I've already had the coming out of the closet with my psychic work to begin with, and you know, at that point, things had continued to rupture with my family. And so for me to consider, like, ruffling feathers within the spiritual community, because they had become my family, the spiritual community in Durango, the metaphysical spiritual community in Durango, had become my family of choice. So to think about focusing on doing money and business with my psychic work, that was a hard one for me to swallow, because I'm like, the feeling was, I can't afford to lose anybody else. So that's where I'm going to leave this part of the story as we head into part 3. And part 3, we're going to be diving into the deep end of the pool of a tragedy, like this information about psychic work, money, and business, and then the tragedy that happened in my life, and how Somatic Money, purely by accident, you know, and there are no accidents, got planted directly into the middle of my life. So I would love to hear what you think about this, how this is affecting you, what it means to you. Please comment, you can DM me, and be sure to continue along. We will pick up in part 3 of this whole epic story. Okay, see you in the next video. Mwah.